So the importance of business law when you're a startup is that it's a lot easier and cheaper to do things right to begin with rather than going in and fixing it later. I see that a fair amount, and that's okay too. We can fix things later, just like if you're building a house and you maybe don't do something in the foundation correctly, you can still fix the foundation, but it's better in the beginning to get that foundation right. And I'll just give you an example of a new client that I signed up just last night, actually, and they started a construction company. I think they did the LLC on their own. They filed the papers using LegalZoom or whatever. They didn't talk to an attorney, an actual business attorney, to help map out the strategy and work on their agreements. And they've been successful, right? So you can go without legal work and still be successful. But what happened? They ended up with a successful company. They're making a couple $1 million a year. And they realize they essentially have 3 companies in one. So I'm going to work with them on restructuring, corporate reorganization, and we're going to turn one company into 4. We're going to break it up into 3 different operating subsidiaries, and we're going to have a holding company that owns each of those subsidiaries. It's easier and more efficient for tax reasons. You can roll up the books and records to the holding company and file one tax return for all those operating subsidiaries. You isolate risk within each of those entities. So if there's a liability in one, there's less assets to go after for a creditor. It's one of the most basic forms of asset protection, is siphoning off your potential risk within each entity. And then you have your agreements, which they hadn't really addressed. So the subcontractor agreements, because they're a construction company, as well as the customer-facing agreements, which would be tweaked for each operating entity, because each operating entity does different kinds of projects. Like one, for instance, does commercial projects, one does fix and flips, and one does pools and outdoor kitchens. So the type of contract you would use for each one of those entities is going to be fundamentally different. And not only do I like to make sure that the legal terms are appropriate and protect the client, I don't want to just make it a bunch of legal jargon. I love easy intake because I am a business owner too. I've owned businesses in the past, so I understand the importance of having a customer-facing contract that you can put in front of the customer. You can fill out a few fields. You don't have to make a bunch of changes. There doesn't have to be a bunch of negotiations. It's not onerous for the customer to review, and it's appropriate for the situation. For instance, with the commercial contracts, those types of clients will expect a longer contract. If they see a really short, just like one-page contract, they might think, who's this guy I'm doing business with? Because this is just what contracts look like for the types of contractors that we work with. So that's what a business attorney will do. I've seen a lot of different businesses and different industries and the contracts they use and how to structure entities for asset protection and efficiency. Doing that up front, getting a business lawyer up front on retainer, can help you structure that. And it doesn't always have to be complicated. In many instances, for just private companies that never plan on going public, the structure can be quite simple, and there really isn't much legal work to do in the very beginning other than some very basic things, getting that set up. And then you'll start seeing more and more legal needs arise, usually when the company does about revenue of $1 million a year.